Technical and adaptive are two words that are used to describe change. In his book, Canoeing the Mountains, Todd Bolsinger tells the story of the Lewis and Clark expedition. They were experts at canoeing, but then they met the Rocky Mountains. They had to adapt quickly to a new way of exploring. I look at this time of COVID as a blend between these two types of changes. Many of our pastors and congregations have had to learn very quickly to become televangelists. Of course, none of them have the budget that a church like Lakewood has, but they were able to pivot quickly to produce a worship experience, whether it was using Facebook Live or other online platforms. Some began in their living rooms, and others maybe in their home offices, in order to maintain safe surroundings while church activities in the building were suspended. It wasn't that the church was closed, it was that in-person activities were suspended. An interesting thing started to happen. Many of our congregations reported that viewership was more than would normally attend in person on a Sunday morning, as former members could join in and participate from wherever they had moved. And church members were sharing in watch parties so their friends could participate. And surprisingly, financial contributions were up, or at least were holding steady. Sunday mornings on Facebook were full of people talking about Jesus rather than fighting about politics. Pastors' messages were reaching around the world. Who would have thought that someone in West Columbia, Texas, leading worship for a church in Brazoria would be reaching people in places like Bangladesh and Pakistan? The new thing was exciting and required some adaptation to a new format. Church members were happy to meet online for a while and were grateful to be able to connect with each other. It was interesting to see how widely this crossed the generations. People in their 90s were attending Bible studies and Sunday school through technology. And then the newness began to wear off. Congregations longed for the familiar, to be able to meet and worship together, whether the health officials said that it was safe or not. And they longed to sing the old songs, whether it was safe or not. Some pastors felt anxious, not wanting to put their congregations or their own families at risk with COVID, and the pressures began to mount, as some folks wanted to participate virtually and others wanted to be in person. So the challenge became how to do both kinds of services, virtual and in person. What I know is that our pastors have been amazing in trying to adapt to new ways of ministry, and that they also are lamenting the familiar, the celebrations, the hospital visits, and even the funerals, so many of which have been delayed due to COVID. They wanted to lead Easter services to proclaim the resurrection of our Lord and to sing those triumphant songs, just like their congregations did. And now that we're coming into the Advent season, we're trying to figure out how to have our candles lit while we sing Silent Night. We long for the familiar. Just like people throughout time, we long to be comfortable. We want things to go back to what we call normal, which begs the question about what is normal? And what if we can't go back there again? Many of us have been adapting well, but is it an adaptive change? What might it look like this time next year? Or can we see that far ahead? What if we continue to do church outside of our buildings? Will that cause us to ponder what it might be like to let go of our property, where it is all familiar and comfortable, but also focused on ourselves rather than those outside the church that need to hear the good news? Pastor Appreciation Month was in October. Some of our pastors felt very appreciated, receiving cards and gifts, and others didn't feel much love, although they had been working harder than ever to create meaningful worship and points of connection for their congregations. Pastors, please know that I appreciate all that you have been doing and who you are as followers of Jesus Christ, and being true to your calling as a minister of word and sacrament or as a commissioned pastor. And thank you to our staff, as many of us have learned to work from home. Some have returned to the office at least on a part-time basis or somewhat regular basis, and others never stopped coming in. They've been able to adjust to online meetings and communicating through emails and texts rather than picking up the phone or stopping by someone's office to ask a question. We've been in transition this year with the addition of 3 new staff members, and we'll be saying farewell to our beloved Sharon Darden at the end of this year as she retires. Please drive by on December 10th to share your good wishes with her. As Gary Schoonover shared for the Parity Plan, 26 of our congregations experienced growth in 2019. We remain one of the more racially and ethnically diverse presbyteries in the denomination. We're 18% Asian, 5% Black, 4% Hispanic, and less than 1% Indigenous, with a few from the Middle East. We are still overwhelmingly white at 72%, which mirrors what authors have examined about many of the mainline denominations. Our Hispanic pastors have begun a new network and are offering to help our white congregations to begin to think about how to minister to the new majority, well, at least here in Houston. Some of that work will be difficult in a time of COVID. Many of our congregations are located in places where their neighborhoods reflect more diversity than they do inside the walls. This is a challenge as we move forward, learning how to work together to share the good news. So while a part of me wonders what the church will be like in 2021, for those that have been able to adapt to new ways of thinking about how to be church in a pandemic, there will be new opportunities. Those who have struggled will probably still be struggling, and those who have deferred maintenance on their buildings may not have the funds to invest in those repairs. There may be congregations that decide that the work is too hard and their people are too old, and that is their choice. I hope that we will begin to see that God is doing a new thing, and some of us are going along kicking and screaming. I'm reminded of the video of the music teacher who wrote a song about instructing her students virtually. She played a nice tune on the ukulele and then screamed. Friends, it's okay to feel that way. Screaming can be a good release of emotional energy. Let's recognize that we are reaching out to a country that is politically divided pretty much right down the middle. Social injustices continue, and systems that discriminate are in need of reform so that everyone has a chance to succeed. It is into this broken world that we are sent to feed and clothe people, to visit those who are lonely and isolated, and to be a healing balm in places of pain. That is our challenge in the year to come, to be reaching our communities where they are and not expecting them to come to us. Our people are grieving, and we don't even know what we've lost. So we're angry. We long for the familiar old ways and for us to be comfortable. Friends, we can't be looking in the rearview mirror and expect to move forward in any meaningful way. It is time to adapt to the new thing that God is calling us to do and to be as the Presbyterian Church USA here in Southeast Texas and beyond. May we be ready to meet the challenge and to not be afraid. Our communities need our witness as we are faithful to Jesus Christ and the invitation to follow him. May it be so.